We are back with the thrilling conclusion. How much bot's going to be worth? Is it going to be $1 or a little bit more than that? I think we've got some ideas. Cern Basher's here to help walk us through this exciting adventure in numbers. Because when you see these numbers, if you don't get excited, I can't help you. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Oz. Welcome back. We're just going to jump right into it. Sound good?
Sounds great, Brian. Thank you. And so if we look at the next chart, it shows you what the monthly costs for the bots are. So instead of selling a bot monthly, and you just did the math, it's about $26.50 a month if you were to use this bot as a service. Now, $26.50 a month, if the bot's working 7,000 hours a year, you're paying $4.54 per hour, all in, for the bot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So your labor costs are 30% of what they were before. You've saved 70% of your labor costs.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's staggering in terms of the cost saving opportunity for companies. So I have gone as far to say that this is something that corporate leaders need to wake up to. And it is imperative that they get in front of this wave and not get behind it. Because when companies realize how much money they can save, and when bots become capable of enough that they can save that money, the rush will be on to deploy these bots as quickly as possible. But the problem is the industry may not be able to scale as quickly as the demand is there. And look no further to NVIDIA to discover what happens when that happens,
Ooh, boy.
right?
Yeah.
They can command whatever prices they want.
And the big thing here you're saying that I love is what happens if UPS deploys bots before FedEx? Great. Well, we're going to hold back for now. Great. But if your competition is able to drop their delivery rates by 30%, there's no hope at all for you. What are you going to do? You will be absolutely left out in the cold. And I'm excited for the day when an Amazon truck shows up with no front window. What's it need a window for? It's just a box and there's no driver's seat. There's just a bot who's standing in the back of the cargo area and he can grab my box and still not put it in my security box on the side of the house. He'll just leave it on the front because that's just what Amazon does. And he's mimicking human behavior.
Right? You probably just throw it at the house at that point.
And take a picture of it and
Right.
curse at you. It's the human
Yes.
experience.
Yes. But you hit on a key point is this is big competitive challenge for these companies. If UPS gets it and FedEx doesn't, UPS can enjoy higher profits
Mhm.
or drive down the cost of their service and squeeze their competition. And if you want an
Or
example of that,
both.
or both, or both. So here are just some rough numbers on the next page. Walmart, 2.3 million employees. If they're paying them an average wage of $15, that's costing them more like 22. That's $100 billion a year in labor costs. Okay, let's say they could replace eventually 1/3 or 35% of their workforce was replaced by a bot. They would be replacing 805,000 workers. Now, it may sound cruel to say they're going to replace a third of their workforce, but you know what? Their turnover rate every year is higher than this.
Mhm. They won't be
Okay.
firing anyone to do this. It would happen through attrition.
Right. Now, the bots have a 3.5 times to 1 advantage over humans. They can work 7,000 hours a year versus a human's 2,000 hours a year. Again, assuming the bot is capable of doing the work at the same speed as a human. Initially, they're not going to be, but eventually they'll be capable of doing human speed and then faster.
Mhm.
So this is just human speed. So you only need one bot for every 3.5 workers that you replace. So the annual labor savings is $23 billion for one company, Walmart. They're trailing, when I did this, their trailing 12 months pre-tax income was $23 billion. They could double their profits if they wanted to by deploying bots. Now, what they could also do is lower their prices. And that would force Target and Kroger and all the other companies, put them in a very difficult position. Now, Target and Kroger have the same kind of opportunity. And in fact, Kroger could see a doubling of their pre-tax income just by using 20% of their workforce as bots.
I am deeply curious how Kroger's only at 2.5 billion in profit, because their prices are not great. They are so much higher than Walmart or even Target. But okay. And I would point out that on Walmart's 2.3 million employees, I think that's their global figure. And
Yes.
and internationally, they certainly aren't averaging 15, but this gives us a good starting point to look at. And it's definitely, if this isn't eye-opening, you may not have eyes.
That's right. And if you need any more evidence, check out the next slide where I look at Amazon, UPS, and FedEx. Now here I just made it easy and assumed that 35% of their workforce are replaced by bots. The annual labor savings for Amazon is $15 billion. It would be a 66% increase in their pre-tax income.
Now, I will
You,
point out that real quick on Walmart, well, I don't want a bot replacing me. I was at Walmart yesterday. There are now only, I think, 3 or 4 human checkout lines. Everything else is now self-check. Humans are already replaced at every opportunity by bots. That has always been the case. And checker, the cashier is a much better job uh, than any blue collar job, certainly at Amazon, UPS, or FedEx. Those are hard, tedious, soul crushing jobs.
that's right. And it may also be the case that Walmart and others can redeploy people to be customer facing, right?
Yeah.
They can put the bots in the background, unloading the trucks, restocking the stores overnight, and have the actual people be actually working with their customers. It may actually result in a far better experience for Walmart's customers.
Um, I have had soul crushing jobs that were so far below my skill level um, that every day was just monotonous and terrible. And some of those companies that I worked for had other positions that it would have been that would have been better suited to human talents, especially companies like Amazon, UPS, FedEx. There are people who just need a human face that
Mhm.
will not do business with you if you do not have that. Let's at the very least, give the greeters a tambourine so they can do a little more human entertain. No, okay, maybe not that, but yeah, I agree with you.
In the case of Amazon here, I mean, they don't have, many customer-facing employees, but they've got $15 billion of savings to play with.
Well,
They
yes,
they can put that to their bottom line, or what else can they do with that money?
and worth remembering, Amazon has already looked into the very real possibility that they will run out of people that they can hire, because
Hmm.
their attrition rate exceeds the rate of people turning 18.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's answer the question of what might the business model look like.
All right.
So Chris Camillo and I have done some work on this, so I'm comparing his work with mine here. So in his model, he's got the bot working 16 hours a day.
Hmm.
And basically, if the bot works more than that, it's free to the company. It's the opposite of overtime, right? If you can deploy the bot more than that, you get the benefit. Great. So he has the bot working 350 days a year, 5,600 hours a year, at a cost of 1680 an hour. About $95,000 in revenue to the bot maker, to the bot provider. Okay. He has the cost of the bot at about 30,000, 6-year life, about 5,000 bucks a year, maintenance cost of another 5,000, total cost of 10. So the gross profit per bot of $84,000. He projected that by 2030 that there'd be 1.5 million bots in service. Okay, so not bots sold in that year, but this cumulatively the bots that are deployed by 2030, 1.5 million. The revenue then to Tesla or any bot maker that could achieve this would be $141 billion. Cost of 15 billion, operating profit of 126 billion. Applying a PE multiple of 80 gets you to a $10 trillion valuation for just deploying 1.5 million bots. We're just scratching the surface on the 85 million jobs that we can't find workers for. Scratching the surface. Now, my number is a little bit more conservative. I get to a $7 trillion valuation. I'm sorry, what's 3 trillion among friends?
Well, yes, because no one's ever died over money. That's at least a good thing. No, now 100 PE ratio. Let's agree that that's a number people will take objection to, even though
Mhm.
this is at that point, 10 years out or 2030. What did we say?
2030.
2030. Even though it would be an industry in its infancy, let's back it
Hmm.
all the way out to 20. A PE of 20 still gives you 1.4 billion trillion valuation. So that's
Yep, you can be
that's
you can be
yeah.
that conservative if you want to, but
Well, and that's
I
the
think
thing
you're.
is anything over a trillion, guys,
Mhm.
guys, the sky becomes the limit. So
Sure.
robots
So
as a
so
service.
yeah, so this is what kind of the business model looks like in terms of the profit margin and net income for a bot maker on a per bot basis. So we're looking at 60 to 70% net profit margins. And on a per bot basis, a profit of between $6,000 and $60,000 a year, depending on the capability of the bot. Again, using the wage rate as a proxy for the bot's capabilities. If it can only do $5 an hour work, then it'll make you $6,000 a year.
Yeah.
By the way, how much money does Tesla make selling a car?
Um, well, let's see, about 8 to 12,000, depending on the car.
Net
Wouldn't you
income?
say? Net, right? I mean, it's about 20% margin on 60,000. So yeah, about 12
Okay.
to 8 to 12,000.
Okay. So they could make this money on a bot earning 750, doing 750 an hour work each and every year for 10 years.
Yeah,
Now, if the bot becomes more capable than that, then they could make 25, 30, $40,000 a year on each bot for the life of the bot. So this is an order of magnitude greater opportunity than the EV business
sure,
for Tesla.
sure. That
Okay.
is, that is, marginally insane.
Yes. Now, let's look at it a little further. Let's assume now, at whatever point in time you want to pick, that the bots are only commanding $5 an hour and they're only making $35,000 a year per bot. Okay, so we've dramatically reduced the cost of the bot. Well, the annual gross profit per bot is still 26,000. And if there's 150 million of them in service at this point, whatever point in time you think this is, that's a net profit of $3 trillion. Now, this could be one company, it could be the whole industry. Take your pick, doesn't matter. The industry's valuation at that point, I'm using a PE now of 60, is $240 trillion. Why am I using a PE still of 60? Why not something lower? Well, 150 million is still a low number compared to the number of physical labor jobs that there is in the world. Also, as we know, whenever you drive down the cost of something, you get more of it, not less. So even if we replace 3.5 million workers, 3.5 billion workers in the world with bots, we'll probably deploy 5 billion bots because we'll find things now that become economical to do that weren't before.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the far right column, $3 an hour per bot, a billion bots. It's 11 trillion in profit and a $450 trillion industry valuation. That's a billion, and I think that the opportunity ultimately is far more than a billion. Not to mention the uses potentially off of planet Earth. Okay, let's not limit ourselves to bots on Earth. It is clear that we're going to be sending bots out into the far reaches of the solar system, eventually, right?
Sure.
Maybe mining asteroids or whatever it is. We'll send out bots for exploration. There might be a lot of bots set to Mars at some point, et cetera. So, but for now, I'm keeping my feet grounded on Earth and focusing on the opportunity here. It's plenty big enough.
I think it's hilarious that we're saying your feet are firmly on the ground because I think we're going to get a comment or two that might suggest that you are thousands of feet tall with your head also in the clouds. We shall see. I think the beauty is when I see doubters and haters, they never show numbers. Because if they showed the numbers, you could say, wait a minute, nope, let me make a couple adjustments. Boom, we're back
Hmm.
to a good number. But the people who are on the other side, like you and I, we see these numbers and we share these. We make the math so you can look at it and change it yourself. Say, no, this number is going to be this. And then you tell me. And I've had people say, look, I think Tesla's a terrible investment because if we get FSD, it's going to be a couple years late. And I say, I mean, okay, a couple. So just shift all your numbers by 2 years.
Mhm.
It's still magical. So with that said,
With that said, so let's actually try to look at time frame. So what I showed there a minute ago, there was no time frame associated with that. I don't know when we'll get to 1 billion bots, but let's maybe look at some illustrations and see what this might look like. So here's one example. This year, 2024, 10 bots are deployed worldwide. I don't think that's a stretch.
I don't think that's a
Next year,
stretch.
next year, 10x increase. We go to 100. Okay.
Very reasonable.
2026, 10,000. 2027, 100,000. 2028, 600,000, and 1.5 million by the end of 2029. That gets you to Chris Camillo's numbers, 1.5 million by 2030. Okay.
Okay.
The growth doesn't really happen in earnest until the mid 2030s when you got 50, 100 million bots deployed, 250 million, 500 million. There's actually no year on this chart where we're making more than 400 million bots.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we use our refrigerator example, it's entirely conceivable the industry could make 400 million bots just using the companies that make refrigerators and the amount that they make a year. Okay.
Yes.
So if this looks reasonable, then let's look at then what this might mean. So the numbers there in the left column are from the previous chart. If we assume that the bots cost $20 an hour initially, and then all the way down to 3, I'm assuming an 85% cost per hour reduction in what it costs to deploy a bot over time. Then the industry revenue at 7,000 hours a year, you can see there, grows to 31 trillion by 2040. If the profit margin is only 50%, then the profits are 15 trillion. And initially, the PE ratio would be very, very high, right? We're already seeing that today. Figure AI just raised 675 million. What's the PE? It's infinite. They don't have any earnings. So early on in the opportunity, the PE could be very high, but I'm dropping the PE all the way down to 36 by 2040, an 82% reduction in PE multiple. And I get an industry market value of over 500 trillion.
Now, what is an example of a company with a PE of 36? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Well, there are lots of companies with PE multiples in that range or higher, but certainly some of the large mega cap tech names are in that range, or maybe a little bit lower in the case of some of them. But any company that is highly profitable and has growth potential, a PE of 30, 36, 40 is not a crazy PE.
Okay.
And again, this is bots deployed of 1.5 billion, where the limit may be, 5, 8, 10 billion.
And again, $567 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just the visual of how the PE multiple and the bot hourly rate decline over time. Okay, so high in the beginning, and then over time, competition comes in, multiples come down, still gets you to 500 trillion. It's crazy to even say it, but I'm trying to be as conservative as possible here. It's just that the magnitude of the numbers, 5.5, 1.5 billion of anything, is going to get you some crazy numbers.
And remember, we're not saying that a company will be worth 500 trillion. We're saying the market cap of all the bot makers combined
Correct.
could be that, assuming these numbers are in play.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there are some companies that will do better than others, just like in any industry, but the industry will be big enough for many players and probably many specialized players, right? There may be a bot maker that specializes in bots that do work underwater,
Right.
right? Where Tesla may say, you know what, we're not even going to worry about that. That's too specialized. We're not even going to think about that.
Sure.
But that might be a $1 trillion business for somebody at some point.
Sure. Deep sea divers are paid very, very highly because of the danger and difficulty of the job, and the number of hours they can work is very limited because of how dangerous and difficult it is.
Mm-hmm. So what I just showed was one illustration. Let's look at four different illustrations. And we don't have to go into all the detail here, but this a slow start, a slow ramp, a slow start, and a faster ramp, fast start, slow ramp, fast start, fast ramp. A, B, C, and D. In A, you get to 50 million bots by 2040. B gets you to 150 million bots by 2040. C gets you to 100 million bots, and B is 150 million. Sorry, that's the annual amount that's produced. Sorry, the last line, the total there is the number we should be looking at. So 140 million in A, 900 million in B, 360 million in C, and 1.2 billion in D. So four very different scenarios in terms of potential.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do here is show people the impact of the timing of all this. To your point about, well, what happens if FSD is 2 years later? And what I want to show here is it ultimately really doesn't matter that while these lines look very different, these are very different trajectories, very different growth paths, okay, in these four different scenarios.
Right.
If we look at the next chart, ultimately by 2040, you get to an industry that's between 250 trillion and 450 trillion.
Right.
Now, that's obviously wide enough to drive, the universe through, but the point is this will be potentially by then, whatever pathway you want to assume, easily the world's largest industry. Now, by 2030, there's significant differences,
Mm-hmm.
right? The first set of boxes there, a $1 trillion industry up to $150 trillion industry, depending on the rate, the speed of the progress and development here. Absolutely, it matters in the next decade or two, or the next decade or so. But beyond that, once the industry gets to a point where it is deploying hundreds of millions of bots per year, it is a very large industry.
Yeah.
Now, for most investors, looking at 2040 today is crazy. They wouldn't look that far out, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to recommend any stock or make an investment recommendation. That's not what the purpose of this is. We're just looking at the potential of the humanoid bot industry, and one day it will be the largest market on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is just a visual of the previous page. The
A
fast
visual of
start,
it.
fast ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just
Mm-hmm.
a picture of it. And you can see everything kind of converges towards 2040. Whatever path you start out, it's going to get very close to that, 300, 400 trillion range.
Yeah.
So we did a pretty good job, I think, of answering all these questions.
I think
The,
so. I think so. You got the monkey checks. That's helpful. Is this the last one? Great.
this
So
is.
we went kind of long. I think we may have artificially thrown a break in there to put a third one. So I do want to thank you guys. Thank you for hanging out, Cern. But thank everybody for bearing with us and asking so many great questions in the comments. I do have a question for you. How crazy are these numbers? What likelihood that any of what we said is going to be accurate? There's ranges, so I mean, I hope 100% on some of them. But let us know in the comments. If you get a chance, go check out Cern Basher. His links will be in the description. Everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual things, and stay tuned, stay juicy. And I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.